It is time to continue with the season previews today, and we got the Columbus Blue Jackets in this one. The Blue Jackets took a massive step from last season. The question is, can they take another one? The 2025-26 season previews are in full swing. We are almost a month away from the NHL season beginning, and we are celebrating that by previewing all 32 teams' upcoming seasons. We have done Anaheim to Colorado alphabetically, so be sure to check those out. But now we head on to the Columbus Blue Jackets, where the Blue Jackets have not been a good team for the last couple of years until last year, where they took a massive step. And I'm asking the question, can they take that one again? But first and foremost, let's look at 2022-23, where they went 25-48-9 for 59 points. They were 31st in the NHL that year. Just not a good year. They were second last in the entire league. And yeah, again, like we kind of expected that. Like the team was getting worse. And as a result, they would draft third overall. They got Adam Fantilli, part of the big players on this roster, helping them build up. In 2023-24, they got a little bit better. They went 27-43-12 for 66 points. They were 29th in the NHL that year. So they did win 2 more games, but they had a substantial more amount of overtime losses, which is why they had a lot more points than they did last year. But hey, points-wise, it's an improvement, definitely. And then just before 2024-25 hits, tragedy strikes. Johnny Gaudreau unfortunately passes away. Rest in peace to him. It's been a year since it's happened at this point. It's absolutely terrible, even still thinking about it to this day. But the Blue Jackets, with that and their guys taking a big step, they went 40-33-9 for 89 points. They were 20th in the NHL. They missed the playoffs, just barely, but even still, it was a very successful season under the circumstances of what they were dealing with. So you got to give them a lot of credit for sure. It was a rough couple of days, couple of months for the Jackets in terms of just, dealing with the loss of one of their teammates, an incredible teammate at that. And they took that and they had a really good season out of that. But I'm asking myself the question, are they going to be able to take another step this coming season? Looking at the management for this Blue Jackets team, it's been changed since last year, obviously. Beforehand, it was Jarmo Kekalainen as a general manager, and multiple other coaches have fluctuated through. But they have a new coach and a new GM as of last season. Don Waddell became the GM after Kekalainen was released. He's been very solid here. He's made some very solid moves. He's had some moves, though, where I've been like, I don't really like that. I'm not so sure about that. So definitely he's had his controversies for sure with me in Columbus, but overall, I think he's done a good job. And then as well as that, too, Dean Evason is the brand new head coach. He's been there since 2024-25. So again, he was there in that season, too. Both of these guys in this newer regime, you can't even really call it new at this point. They've been there for a full season, heading into their second. It should be interesting, but overall, I like these two guys. Looking at your key arrivals and key departures, you start off with your key adds. You have Charlie Coyle, Isaac Lundestrom, Miles Wood, and Christian Jaros are your 4 key arrivals, new guys added onto this roster. So starting off on the key arrivals side, you have Charlie Coyle, who's going to be a solid third-line center. I don't like what they gave up for him and Miles Wood, but he will be a solid third-line center on that team. Lundestrom will be a good fourth-line center. That's some good depth there on the bottom 6 for sure. Coyle can provide some good secondary scoring, and same with Lundestrom there as well. So those are 2 moves that I don't really have a problem with. Miles Wood I was a little bit confused about. He's on a longer-term contract. He is getting paid a little lesser money, though. He will play most likely on the 4th line for the Blue Jackets for sure, so that's something you want to look at there as well. And then Christian Jaros is nothing more than just a depth defenseman, to be honest with you. Now you take a look at your key departures. And I got to be honest with you, there's not a lot of guys here in the key departures who are going to be high-impact losses. Daniil Tarasov, James Van Riemsdyk, Sean Kuraly, and Justin Danforth are your guys who are no longer with the team. Tarasov was like the backup slash third string. He kind of got cut off at the end of the year by Jack Reeves, so he was no longer even the backup. He has been off to Florida. James Van Riemsdyk, I actually can't think of where he's at now. I think it's Detroit where he's gone at this point, but he is no longer with Columbus. He was a solid pickup and a solid middle six player for them, but really nothing more than that. Sean Kuraly was a good third or fourth line center. He's back with Boston now, and then Justin Danforth, I believe, is going to, I think, Minnesota. I'm not 100% sure. I'm probably wrong with that, but regardless, again, not a lot of huge impact players there in key departures. So then you look at the depth chart for the Blue Jackets, and I gotta be honest with you, I like the forward core. There's a lot of guys you can like here on this forward core for Columbus. You start off on the left wing side. You have Dmitry Voronkov, Boone Jenner, Cole Sillinger, and Yegor Chinakhov rounding out your first four, and then you have Jake Christensen, or sorry, I'm looking at the wrong one. Zach Aston Reese is your extra guy. I'm looking at like the wrong part on my notebook. I apologize. Anyhow, a very solid left wing side. Again, this is made by the Hockey News. I did not make this myself, so that way I don't forget anybody or do something stupid. But regardless, Voronkov there on that first line left wing has been somebody who has come out very pleasantly for the Blue Jackets. Somebody who came in there for Columbus last season, not this season, but the season before in 23-24, was a big surprise, did very solid, and even this year, too, he took another step and looked very good as well. So a lot to like there with Voronkov for sure. You also have Boone Jenner, who has obviously been here for a very long time. He's been a veteran with Columbus. I don't expect that to change, obviously. Cole Sillinger had a good step of a season last year. I thought he had some improvements from the struggles before, so he was solid last year. Chinakhov is interesting because he requested a trade in July. So that's something you want to monitor there and look at, because that could be a guy you could see get traded. He's a solid bottom six player. He still has some upside. He's still a little bit young, but overall I'm not expecting for him to get traded by a lot, obviously, so I just want to put that out there. And then Zach Aston Reese is a solid extra forward there for Columbus. So barring Chinakhov gets traded, which might be possible, honestly, Zach Aston Reese will come in there and replace him. You look at your center depth. You have Sean Monahan, Adam Fantilli, Charlie Coyle, and Isaac Lundestrom rounding out your first four. And then you have Luca Del Bel Beluz as your extra forward there as well. So going through that there, Monahan had a great season last year. It was a really hard year for him because obviously Johnny Gaudreau was one of his best friends and losing him was terrible, but he had a really good season last year. I think that shouldn't be avoided. Fantilli was highlighted as one of those players who took a big step last year as one of the younger guys in Columbus. So I'm expecting for that to kind of repeat itself and then take another step this year, or at least be around the same. That's the expectation that I'm looking at. And then you also have Charlie Coyle there too, who's a new acquisition, will be a good secondary scorer, good third line center. And then Isaac Lundestrom as your fourth line guy won't be too bad. And then Del Bel Beluz, we talked about him in the prospect pool overviews. He is somebody who will be interesting because I think that he has that third line center upside. It's just a matter of, can he beat over Lundestrom in training camp? Can he break the team's roster at the beginning of the season? So that's the question we're asking ourselves there with that. That should be very interesting to monitor there as well. On the right wing side, you have Kirill Marchenko, Kent Johnson, Matthew Olivier, and then Miles Wood rounding out your first four. Then you have Malatesta as your extra forward there on that right wing side. So Marchenko was a player last year who took a massive step for Columbus. And that's one of those guys, too, who was like drafted in 2018, not really that well known of, or maybe not 2018. He was drafted much earlier on than some of the other guys. He's not really that well known of, and he comes in here. He took a really big step last year for the Blue Jackets. So I'm expecting for that to be the same thing and that to be the same expectation there as well. And then Kent Johnson was solid last year too. Again, the young guys who were a little bit of a concern for me, like Johnson and Sillinger, guys who were like making the Blue Jackets rebuild, I guess, like making it seem longer with their struggles before. I thought they took good steps last year, and they're starting to improve as NHLers, and they will be on the team next season full-time for sure. Olivier was a fighter. He's a guy who is an enforcer. He can play a good third-line role as well. He's a good hitter. He can work hard. So I have no problem there with Olivier either. And then Miles Wood will be a solid fourth-line player there as well. Not really expecting a lot out of him, but will still be solid. And then Malatesta is a good depth forward. Overall, their forward core is young, but I like it. So then you take a look at their defensive core, and I gotta be honest with you, their defensive core is where I have the most issues with it. Starting off on your left shot side, you have Zach Werenski, Denton Mateychuk, and Damon Severson rounding out your first three. Then you have Jake Christensen, now is where he comes in, rounding out your left shot side as an extra guy there. So overall, Werenski carries the workload here. He is that guy. He was phenomenal last year for Columbus. That goes without question. He was like second or third in Norris voting. He played incredible for Columbus and honestly kind of carried their blue line in my opinion. So I just want to put that out there. Mateychuk will be a good, decent second pairing defenseman. He has some good offensive sides to his game. He played games last year with Columbus and looked solid, so I'm expecting him to make the team out of camp there. And then Severson has had injury problems, but is known for his defensive plays. Obviously, he's on that longer of a contract. I think an overpaid contract in my opinion, but regardless, we'll have to see what happens there with him. And then Christensen is, again, a depth defenseman. We'll maybe see him a couple of times this year, but not really that much unless somebody gets hurt. On the right shot side, you have Dante Fabro, Ivan Provorov, and then Eric Gudbranson rounding out your first four. Then you have McDonald and Yaros as your extra defenseman there on that right shot side. So Fabro came in last year as a waiver claim, and he became somebody who was a really high impact and impressive player for Columbus and was really good on that first pairing with Werenski. So I'm expecting for that to repeat itself this year. Besides that, like Provorov and Gudbranson, I'm just not a big fan of. I don't like either of those guys. Defensively, I don't think they're as good as they are. Provorov, them signing them to that contract, I was like, I don't like that. So not a fan of that there. But overall, that right shot side is okay. That's my biggest qualm with it. I think it's just okay. It's nothing special in my opinion. Maybe I'm a little bit too low on it, but let me know your thoughts down below. And then you look at the goaltending. This is where I think it's like the biggest weakness for the Columbus Blue Jackets. This is where they just have the most problems with me. You have Elizabeth Merzlikins, Jet Greaves, and Zach Sawchenko rounding out your first three goalies, and then you have Evan Gardner as your extra goaltender there as well. So, Merzlikins. I am not a fan of Merzlikins. He just does not have good numbers when he plays goalie. It's just not, he's just not their guy, and he just hasn't looked good. And they can't move him either. He's been really struggling, and his contract's not that great either, so he's stuck there for at least a little bit longer in Columbus. Jet Greaves, when he came in, was very solid. So I'm expecting for him to play a lot more games this year. I wouldn't be shocked if him and Merzlikins share the net. I would not be shocked at that whatsoever. So be sure to look out for that there as well. Sawchenko and Gardner probably won't see a lot of time, but they are guys who are down there in the depth chart, barring there is an injury of some sort that you could see them be playing games this year. So, yeah, overall, like, my biggest concern is the goaltending. Is Merzlikins going to be that guy? I guess we'll see. So that being said, that's one of my biggest questions here with Columbus is, will the goaltending improve? And last year, the reason why you could argue they missed the playoffs was because of their goaltending. They were 25th in goals against average. Now, not all of it is goaltending. I think, again, there's some poor defensive play in here as well. Like, I'm not a fan of Werenski down from the defense. Honestly, I feel like there's just some defensive struggles they had last year. But the big part of it is Merzlikins. Merzlikins really struggled last year. His goaltending metrics have not been good the last couple of years. So that's my biggest problem with that. Like, if they're going to make the playoffs, they need to have better goaltending than they've had. And I feel like maybe Jet Greaves is the answer. We'll have to see, honestly. That's the biggest thing that I'm asking myself there with this team. Everything else you can kind of get away with, but if you have bad goaltending, it makes things very difficult to get into the playoffs. And I mean, like, again, you look at Edmonton. Like, Skinner has had poor goaltending, but he's had points where he's been very good. So it's just about consistency and having a guy who can at least play solid on at least half the nights he starts. So again, that's the biggest thing there with me. The other thing is the power play. How will the power play be this year? They were ranked 22nd on the power play. And for a team with so many young players, it's not that big of a surprise that it did struggle a little bit because, again, you have so many new young players coming and conversing together. It's a little hard for them to work things out. I do expect it to improve this year. So that's one of the things that I'm looking forward to seeing. will the power play improve like I think it will? And now it's time to ask ourselves the final question. Playoffs? Standings? Cup? So, obviously, I don't think the Cup is in the books this year. I just don't think this team's ready, and I think Blue Jackets fans will understand that. I just don't think they're there yet, and that's not a bad thing either, because it takes time to get there. But in terms of standings, I feel like they will probably be around the 5th spot again, maybe the 6th if they regress a little bit. Honestly, I kind of am expecting a regression, and it's not because I think last year was a fluke, but I feel like they kind of overstepped things last year. So we'll have to see. I don't think playoffs is possible either, but they will contend. They will be there. They will be in the mix, absolutely. They'll be there battling with Montreal and, whoever else is there with them in that spot next year. So, again, let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. Maybe I'm too low on them. But I think overall this is a good team. I like their forward core. Everything else I do have some questions about outside of Zach Werenski, but let me know your thoughts down below. Thank you for watching, and I will see you guys in the next video.